Hello, and welcome to Mary's Coaching Corner. Cool concepts with a coaching twist. Today's cool concept is about crossroads between a company's chapter. The twist is looking at those crossroads from the perspective of what is the breakdown that then creates the choices we need to make at these crossroads. If you were to Google the life cycle of a business, you'll get to words like startup, growth, maturity, and then oftentimes it'll be stated as decline or reinvention. So obviously, I want to focus on the reinvention part. And when you reinvent, there's this opportunity that a whole nother chapter of your business can be legacy. Even though a consultant may focus on what do you need at startup, the sweet spot that I really look at is what do companies need in these spaces between chapters. So between startup and growth, the typical breakdowns are that the people who started the company are overwhelmed, burnt out, and it often puts a strain on personal and professional relationships. That puts them at a crossroad, and the choices are I can either keep control, but I'll probably continue to stay overwhelmed, or I can depend on others. And if I depend on others, whether it's hiring people or hiring vendors to outsource some of the work, I put myself in a position where my company can go from startup to growth. Similarly, between growth and maturity, there's still breakdowns in between these two chapters, but there are different kinds of breakdowns. Breakdowns here are really frustrations, inefficiencies, and capacity issues. So the frustrations are often with the people who started the company, recognizing they've invested in all this growth, but there's this frustration because different people are doing work differently than how it was set up in the first place. But how it was set up typically doesn't uh, get put down on paper, does not get documented. That's the intellectual property of a company that has value when it's sold. And so the opportunity here is to make a choice to invest in systems. So the crossroad choices are I can allow autonomy, let everybody do what they want to do, which will create inconsistent results for my customers, or I can invest in systems to become more efficient. All right, so between maturity and reinvention, the breakdowns here are typically that systems are aging. We've documented so much how we want things to be done with SOPs or standard operating procedures that we've created a bureaucracy. And it's often common that people who have worked for a company for a long time get attached to how we do things, or more likely attached to how we've done things. So the crossroad choices here are I can, get complacent where I just allow the way we've always done it to be the way we're going to do it. Or I can engage in incubating new ideas, which reinvents my business. And then there's the stage of legacy, where you can go from reinvention to legacy. The breakdowns here often occur where even in reinvention, there's some issues that are avoided, like perhaps the aging of the folks that started the company. It could be resentment by new leaders because even in the reinvention, there's still an attachment to how things are done. And one of the big ones is denying mortality. Often the mortality of the leaders and employees who are aging. The opportunity here is to really be intentional about passing the baton. Otherwise, it's likely that by default, the company will decline rather than passing the baton, which is what it requires to be a legacy company. And just a note on crisis can happen at any stage of the business. And I often work with companies to develop resilience as an attribute of leadership. And that can be done in advance of a crisis. And it's like walking into a fire with a whole set of tools ready. for any kind of crisis that might come up. And I'll just highlight that one of the strategies of being ready for a crisis is knowing how to put together triage teams that are focused on the short-term needs of specific stakeholders. For example, with COVID, one of the companies I worked with created a triage team around their employees, a different triage team with a different leader that was focused on the needs of customers. Thanks for joining me in this cool concept at looking at crossroads between a company's chapters. Here's some ways that you can access other videos, book my team for an educational lunch and learn. This can happen in person or virtually, and I'd love to connect with you. You can find me on LinkedIn under Mary O. Andrews, and have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.